Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the month of December and how the calendar is just all types of screwed up, and they're going to have to find a way to fix it one way or the other, and hopefully it'll happen this offseason. Definitely a lot of hurdles to get over to get there, but let's get into the portal. We have about a million things to get to. We obviously have not talked about this since Monday, so a lot of stuff has happened since then, and let's go ahead and jump in here, and we'll start with one of the biggest names in the portal right about now, or I guess no longer in the portal. John Mateer, he is officially committed to Oklahoma. Sounded like this was a battle. It sounded like this was a little bit of an NIL battle with Miami, as well as North Carolina. And it sounds like North Carolina might have had the biggest number on the table. So, remarkable stuff from Bill Belichick to try to push for this one. He officially decided to reunite with Ben Arbuckle, his former offensive coordinator. This guy is a downright Heisman contender. If they can figure out that wide receiver position and that O-line position, especially at Oklahoma, this guy is as dangerous as anyone in the country, and he could do some really, really special things in 2025, but gives you an idea of what UNC is doing on the portal. They have a little bit more means than maybe even I thought they did, but remarkable stuff from Oklahoma to lock this one down, especially battling those two schools that they were. Luke Romanhoek, Mississippi State has their quarterback, and I think it's a fantastic fit. I think him and Jeff Lebby fit together really, really well. He can make all the throws in the world, and hopefully he'll be there for the next 2 to 3 years. He's a very talented kid, and if Mississippi State can build around this kid for the next 2-3 years, could be a really, really good program by the time he leaves. Caden Salter, Colorado has their quarterback, and Juju Lewis is coming in as well, the very talented freshman that signed there a little bit ago. I tend to think he will not be fully ready right away. I tend to believe this will be your starter for Colorado going into next year. Can't promise that. Obviously, Julian Lewis will have plenty to say about that, but I think it's a great pickup. I don't think Julian Lewis will be all the way there in his very first year, and I think Caden Salter is a very talented kid. Obviously, had a relatively tough year. Some of that is injury, some of that is some different things, but overall, very talented kid and definitely someone that I tend to believe will be the starter taking over for Shedeur Sanders around Boulder. Malik Murphy, this was an interesting situation around him. He is off to Corvallis. He will be at Oregon State Beaver this next year, and a little bit of a surprise, especially after Miami missed on a number of guys. I thought they could possibly slide in for this kid, but sounds like the situation between him and Duke was a little bit more Duke's decision than what was his. You hate to see it happen, but happens about once a year, happens more than that, happens a couple of times a year where a player is, I don't want to say asked to leave, but encouraged to find another place to play, and Duke has found their new guy in Darian Mensah. It worked out relatively for everyone, but Oregon State has a very, very good quarterback, Malik Murphy, and he'll definitely be able to shine for the Beavers. Noah Fafita, for the second year in a row, Arizona State has been able to hold on to Noah Fafita with a ton of portal talk. He officially is coming back to Arizona, and you badly need it. You still have a ton of outgoing talent, and you were able to get Dalton Johnson back in, a couple other players, so Brent Brennan is doing the best of his ability to get a lot of these talented players back in the building, but he's going to have to go get a couple of guys, especially at the wide receiver position. When you lose a guy like T-Mac, you're definitely going to need some help there. So a lot of work still to do, but this is a huge piece that they're keeping in Tucson, Arizona. TJ Finley, very, very talented guy. Very, very talented kid. And Miles, I do not know, if I'm being totally honest. I was about to talk about him here in a second, but I can check that here in a second, and we'll see if he actually did. I know it's leaning that direction, though, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But TJ Finley, he will be the replacement for Darian Mensah over there at Tulane. Really solid pickup, very experienced quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and found another one, if I'm being honest, but very talented kid and could very well be the starter for John Sumrall in 2025. Nick Anderson, he is going to LSU. LSU just continues to roll. We'll talk about them in a little bit more detail here in a second, but this wide receiver group with Barry and Brown and a lot of these other talented guys could be one of the best groups in the entire country. Really talented kid. If he is on the field and healthy, he's going to make all the difference in the world. CJ Daniels, speaking of LSU, CJ Daniels is making his way out of Baton Rouge and down to Coral Gables, Miami, and they badly need it. They need it because Isaiah Horton is making his way out. We'll talk about him here in a second. A couple of teams in the SEC that are firmly in for him, but a big-time pickup here. Hopefully he can get back to that Liberty level of play that he was playing at a couple of years ago. J. Michael Sturdivant, another piece for DJ Lagway over there at Florida, and you badly need it. A big-time 50-50 ball guy. You add him to guys like Eugene Wilson, and we'll talk about Dallas Wilson at the end of the show, but a lot of really talented receivers coming over to Florida, and this is a big-time player for them to get. And also this is one of my favorite pickups of the entire cycle. Georgia Tech picks up Eric Rivers, a top 5 receiving yards player, over 1,000 yards for FIU last year. Very talented, very shifty, very fast. A great replacement for Eric Singleton as you can get them. Obviously, probably not going to replace everything that Singleton gave them, but very talented guy nonetheless. USC needed this one. They lock up Keyshawn Silver, a very talented defensive tackle. Massive win for DeAnton Lynn and that defensive staff. This is a immediate big impact player and definitely someone that USC just needed. They are bleeding right now, and they were able to get a player that is immediately going to be an impact guy for them. Jaheim Otis, Colorado has their anchor. They have the guy in the middle of that defense that can hold everything down. This is a true NFL talent at defensive tackle, a big 300-pound guy that can make all types of plays. He is going to be a huge player for them, especially with a couple of the guys walking out the door from that talented defense this year. Definitely need someone in the middle there, and they officially got one. Clemson did it. They did it again. It was not a mistake the first time around. They are going into the portal, and it will help this time around. Very talented, very rangy edge rusher from Purdue. Clemson, this is a huge pickup for them and definitely makes their pass rush terrifying going into 2025. Cameron Calhoun, very talented cornerback, from Utah, formerly played at Michigan. He is making his way to Alabama. They badly needed this piece because Devontae Smith, the very talented nickelback for them, is making his way up to Notre Dame. Big time pickup for Notre Dame, especially with a guy like Xavier Watts walking out the door. It'll be interesting to see what Alabama does at that nickel position and how Devontae Smith kind of fits into that defensive game plan for Notre Dame next year. Josiah Trotter, big-time get for Missouri here. This was definitely one that West Virginia was really, really trying to get back on the campus after Rich Rodriguez took the job. They weren't quite able to. Missouri was able to get that one, but remarkable player and definitely a huge middle linebacker for them in 2025. Texas Tech, what is happening over there? They're getting just about every single player they could want. I believe they have 16 different players right now. The top class in the portal got Romello Height from Georgia Tech, got Lee Hunter from UCF, just got Quentin Joyner yesterday from USC. Really, really talented players coming into Lubbock, and he's doing exactly what he needs to do. He's upgrading the talent there and could be a dangerous team in 2025. I really love what Wisconsin's doing the past couple of days. They picked up Billy Edwards, a really talented quarterback from Maryland that probably was a little bit underappreciated this year. They also got some pass catchers. Tanner Koziel from Ball State, very good tight end, and Jaden Ballard, a very talented wide receiver from Ohio State. Never quite found the field, but a very talented guy nonetheless. 4-star coming out of high school. Definitely some upgrades at positions that they badly need over there in Madison. And LSU, we said we would talk about them along with Nick Anderson. They got Destin Hill to add to that wide receiver room, very talented kid from Florida State. And then they also got Mansour Deline, a huge safety from Virginia Tech, Jack Pryburn, edge from Florida, and they're really heating up for that Texas defensive tackle, Sadir Mitchell, that played around with the portal like it was a little bit of a jump rope, but he is officially in. Looks like he could be finding his way to Baton Rouge with his former coach in Bo Davis. Patrick Payton, newly in the portal. This is kind of an intel little segment. It looks like LSU is leading here as well, which would be an absolutely huge get for them. They've done a great job getting some supplemental pieces at that edge rushing position, like Jack Pryburn, like Deshaun Womack. This would be their game record. This would be the guy that would totally change this thing for them and would be an incredible thing to watch. The Jalen Mbakwe story was a very short but a very weird saga. He entered. There were rumors of Ole Miss offering a seven-figure offer on the fly, and then he returned to Bama, and it sounds like he could be playing both ways next year. Very, very talented, very intense player, and absolutely can play some wide receiver for them if they need to. It'll be interesting to see how this develops into next year, and if he is the next Travis Hunter in the world of college football. Jalen Catalon, very talented, very experienced player out of UNLV, played at Arkansas, played at Texas, could go back with Barry Odom to Purdue. He has obviously been with him for a lot of his career, so could be a natural landing point there, but definitely a guy that a lot of people will be after, especially some of those SEC teams. Bo Pribula, the big story of this past weekend. He has made his way to Iowa, Missouri, I believe Ole Miss, I believe Indiana. He's going to make his way to UCF here pretty soon. I would lean Missouri right now. Ole Miss will obviously have something to say here, but plenty of teams that are very much in for him. I think Indiana might be Fernando Mendoza territory. A lot of different things flying around, as you can imagine, and we'll talk about that guy right now, Miles, and we'll see if he has committed. I'll just go over here, see if I can do this pretty normally and efficiently over here, but very talented kid nonetheless, someone out of Georgia Tech, and it does look like, regardless if he is committed or not, it does look like he has. There's been a number of different reports, and we'll see. We'll see if there's a little bit more for sure thing. I've seen a couple of different tweets out there. Definitely something that I expect to happen today. So if it has happened, not necessarily overly surprising. Very talented kid, someone they very badly need over there at Auburn. A little bit surprised, honestly, if I'm being honest, considering the other teams that were in for him. But at the end of the day, a huge pickup for Auburn, and definitely a guy that can be their number one wide receiver right next to Cam Coleman next year. Zachariah Branch and Zion Branch have made a lot of different headlines over the last couple of days. He entered, both of them entered as a with no contact tags, which essentially just means either two things, really, is what it means. Either a team has already called them and they have made their decision, or they're going to reach out to teams. They have a couple of teams in mind, and that's the way they're going to go about business. Sounds like it's more of the latter in this scenario, and it sounds like Washington, Texas, and Georgia are the three to really keep an eye out on. Sounds like he could be making his way to Athens here pretty soon. Would be a huge pickup for Georgia, along with a couple of the other receivers, and we'll talk about one of them here in a second. I think Texas might be the best fit here, but also Washington would make a lot of sense with Jedd Fisch. But at the end of the day, it sounds like it's going to be his decision to make, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Dane Key, a huge pickup if Georgia were going to be able to do this one. It sounds like it is going to be theirs to lose. Very talented wide receiver. I'm a huge fan of what Dane Key can do on the outside, and I think he could be wide receiver one for Georgia. I would expect a commitment here, if I'm being honest. I would expect one relatively quickly. Could be this weekend. Very talented kid, and definitely a guy that Georgia badly needs in that wide receiver room. And then Isaiah Horton. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Very talented Miami wide receiver that was floating with the portal for quite some time. He has officially jumped in. Sounds like Georgia and A&M are two to watch here. Alabama as well in here. That they actually might be the leader in this situation. So I would expect Alabama. I think you'll probably hear from A&M, but I would bet that Alabama probably wins out on this one relatively quickly, if I had to imagine. And just to give you an idea of where we stand, after all of that craziness, and Eric Singleton might be knocked off this list here in a second, but Patrick Payton is leading the way for all of the available players. Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson sounds like Arizona State is in there. Sounds like Louisville is also involved. A couple other teams to definitely keep an eye out on there. Fernando Mendoza, we talked about it. Feels like that's Indiana. There could be a couple other teams that are in for him, but definitely something to watch. Jakario Davis. It sounds like the NFL draft is calling his name a little bit more aggressively than the portal is right now, so it sounds like he's leaning that direction. Could expect a decision there pretty soon. And then Casey Concepcion, he's making his rounds, going to Colorado, going to a number of places. I'd lean toward the Buffs right now, but a lot of different teams that are still trying to make ground up in that situation. So a lot of things have happened. As you can imagine, there are a million different things that will happen over the next couple of days. As Miles told me right here, Eric Singleton could be committed to Auburn, and we could have that one locked in, so that would be a huge pickup for the Tigers. We will obviously update you on everything that you need to know at the start of next week, but we'll take our second break here. We'll move on from the portal for the time being, and we will move forward to a couple of X factors for the teams that are playing this weekend. We'll go, what is the X factor or maybe question as we head into this upcoming weekend, as we head into the first round games? What is the most important part for all of these teams? We'll break it down right after this.